Hey everybody, and welcome to this special on the transit Mercury in Taurus. I'm Amani. I'm a karmic, holistic, astrological life coach, and I like to go in depth in all that I do, and all of my interpretations, especially when it comes to Venus, Mercury, Sun transits and everything really, are based on Vedic astrology, which is based on where the planets or the luminaries, which are the sun and the moon, are any given time in the sky, and all times are in GMT time as well. So yeah, thanks for listening, and yeah. So typically each year Mercury transits through Taurus, say from April to May, for about 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes 4, depending on whether it's retrograded or not. The key words for the energetic frequency of Mercury in Taurus is grounded, practical communication and thinking, and the peak energy is when we're like a 1.5 weeks through this energy, and Taurus is a fixed earth sign. So this year Mercury is in Taurus from the 23rd of May. Mercury then enters out of bounds while still in Taurus on the 1st of June at 1:20 p.m. Until the 6th of June, when Mercury enters Gemini. So when Mercury is travelling through Taurus, it's like our mind puts on cozy slippers and settles in for a thoughtful cup of tea. It offers us a chance to, just check our communication vibe, establish new mental habits, thought patterns, communication patterns that will genuinely last, because remember, Taurus is fixed energy, so it's about long-lasting habits. It's time to focus on clear expression, strategic planning and meaningful connections, while also being mindful of the potential for stubbornness and overthinking. So positively, as I said, we can have an increase in grounded communication. We can have clear, thoughtful and effective expressions of ideas, particularly in matters related to finances, material comfort, how we spend our money through our possessions and use our possessions, stuff like that. And we may just become more sensual as well, because never forget, the highest expression of Taurus is the mastery of your sensual and all other desires. Also, we can become more patient and persistent, especially in our mindset and our communication and long-term planning. And it's a great energy that we can use to see things through to completion without rushing. Slowly does it. So, as I said, Taurus influence can increase our ability to express and receive love and affection in a tangible, touchy, feely, meaningful way. But negatively, the fixed nature of Taurus can make us more resistant to change, more stubborn, leading to conflicts and missed opportunities. We can overthink as well. We can get stuck in the details, and this can slow down our decision-making progress. And we can just have an overemphasis on material security, building wealth, money, things we can see, spending money on luxuries and stuff like that, distracting ourselves from our emotional and spiritual needs, and this can lead to an imbalance. So the best use of this energy is to use it for strategic planning, especially in business and financial matters, taking a grounded approach and being more realistic and making decisions that are sustainable, that we can carry on through time. Also, engage in meaningful conversations, focus on outcomes that we can see. This is a great energy for negotiations, contracts and discussions about our resources. And we can be mindful, more patient with this, thinking before we react and act, avoiding rushing into decisions, so we can maintain our clarity and focus. We can just be more focused on providing emotional security for ourselves, and this can reduce anxiety, and we can just be more stable and practical in how we communicate and understand our thoughts and emotions as well, finding that balance between being sensual, and being grounded, finding joy in simple pleasures, and, looking after our spiritual well-being as well. So yes, be emotional, but look after your spirituality, your higher thinking as well. It's a great energy to deepen our communication in our relationships, especially strengthening our intimate relationships, making thoughtful gestures, doing things that we know the people in our life that we care about will like, being more open in our communication, more affectionate, staying open to others' perspectives, and being willing to compromise to maintain harmony in our relationships. It's a great time to review and plan our financial strategies, ensuring they align with our long-term goals. And if we approach all decisions, especially business decisions, with clarity and patience, we can get good, beneficial outcomes for everyone involved. It's a great energy to reflect on our personal growth, our ideas, our plans, ensuring that they're aligned with our values and, they're practical before taking action on them, and balance our thinking and feeling, staying attuned to our emotions and intuitive needs, but also, increases our ability to think practically and therefore to react practically as well. So yeah, that's the short version of all things Mercury and Taurus. Now I'm going to go in depth. So just a bit more about the practical applications of this energy. Our mind can become like a carefully tended, well looked after, methodical, logical, patient garden, and this can bring gifts and challenges to our everyday life. So practically, our ideas become more durable, as I said, long-term thinking, and less likely to fizzle out. So we're more likely to focus on ideas that, are not silly, they are practical. Instead of jumping between concepts, we can actually stick with one long enough to see results. It's giving quality over quantity energy in our thinking patterns. Our ability to process information through our physical senses get majorly boosted, increased right now. We may pay more attention to tastes, textures, sounds and physical sensations that usually fly under our radar, making us more present in our body, more present with other people as well, especially in intimate surroundings. When we say we're going to do something, we can actually mean it. We can be reliable. People's word can become solid as the earth itself, creating trust or rebuilding trust in relationships. Activities that would normally bore us to tears, like organising files or following detailed instructions, suddenly feel satisfying rather than tedious, boring, and this makes Mercury in Taurus perfect for completing detailed projects that require consistent effort. But negatively, once our mind is made up, good luck changing it. Taurus is very stubborn energy, right? We can find ourselves digging our heels in over insignificant things simply because any change that feels threatening to our mental security scares us, Our processing speed can, downshift and slow down, which can frustrate you and others as well, especially if you're waiting for a response or others are waiting for a response from you. What feels like thoroughly considering to you comes across as painfully slow to others, especially in fast-paced environments. Nuance and metaphor may go completely over our head during this time. We're taking everything at face value, which can lead to missing subtle kills or not getting jokes that require reading between the lines. And we can just, really have sensory overwhelm right now. We can just, because we can pay attention to smells, textures, sounds, loud restaurants, crowded stores can quickly become too much, shutting down our ability to think clearly or communicate effectively. So yeah, in terms of the financial meanings, it's a great energy, as I said, to focus on making positive, practical decisions. So yeah, we can develop an almost supernatural ability to recognize what something is actually worth versus its price tag, and this can help us make purchases that are genuinely valuable to us rather than their value depreciating quickly. We can stick to and create budgets as well, so it's good to sort out our finances. We can find ourselves actually enjoying tracking our expenses and watching our savings grow rather than seeing it as a chore. Our patience can combine with our practical thinking, so it's really good. Our negotiation skills can really level up, so it's great for investments and getting that deal, rather than rushing in and paying the price you're given, and this can really give us financial leverage, and we can just discover creative ways to make what we already have work harder for us as well, finding value in resources that we previously overlooked or underused. But negatively, our need for certainty may prevent us from making timely financial moves. While everyone else is seizing opportunities, we're still weighing the pros and cons until the moment passes. Taurus energy can make financial discussions feel uncomfortably vulnerable, leading us to postpone, put off important money conversations that need to happen right now with partners or family members or business partners, etc. And when we're stressed, we may just overspend, because we can feel really emotionally triggered right now, and we can just overspend on items that appeal to our senses, luxury fabrics, gourmet foods, beautiful objects without questioning their need. And we may hoard as well. Fear of scarcity may lead to keeping items or funds in reserve beyond what's reasonable, preventing healthy circulation of resources in our lives. Politically, we can see an increase in movements that tend to gain staying power rather than flaring up and disappearing. So policies that persist, and this helps bring sustained attention to causes that require long-term commitment to create change, like mental health initiatives, recovery initiatives and stuff like that. We may see that leaders want practical solutions rather than theatrical concepts. Leaders who demonstrate real-world applications of their proposals gain more traction than those offering only vision without substance. Discussions about budgets and public resources may become more transparent and grounded in actual numbers rather than inflated promises, and this can lead to more realistic policy expectations. And Taurus's connection to the earth element often brings ecological concerns to the forefront during this transit, and this highlights sustainable approaches to governance and control and leadership and regulation. But negatively, political frictions can become even more sort of like resistance to changing, and this can make compromise nearly impossible. Leaders can dig in their heels and rather than working with others and finding the middle ground, and this can lead to slowness in changes, and the resistance to progress to outdated systems can be met with fierce opposition, because the status quo, tradition can feel safer than newness regardless of potential benefits. And leaders may overemphasize economic metrics while undervaluing less tangible aspects of societal well-being, creating imbalanced priorities, and the deliberate pace of the Taurian Mercury energy can get in the way of rapid change and mobilization during times when immediate action is required. So in terms of the social collective meanings, groups can become more organized, and we can be all about pooling and distributing shared resources equally, creating systems that benefit everyone through practical cooperation. Collective values can shift, change towards handmade, sustainable and locally produced goods, supporting craftspeople and traditional knowledge keepers. Social groups develop a stronger fact-checking habits, preferring verified information over sensational but unsubstantiated claims, claims that are not true, and this can create more trustworthy information. And communities can design environments that accommodate diverse sensory needs, making physical spaces more accessible and comfortable for neurological and other differences. But negatively on the sort of like social collective level, social groups can become more isolated because of different perspectives, creating stronger bubbles of like-minded thinking that resist outside information. Material possessions and consumer choices can become overly emphasized as identity markers, creating unnecessary social pressures to own certain items to belong to a group. Information can become treated as a scarce resource to be hoarded rather than shared freely, with established systems resisting new voices or approaches, and collective resistance to necessary discomfort can prevent communities from addressing, confronting systematic issues that require challenging conversations and changes. And Mercury in Taurus ultimately teaches us that slow doesn't mean stopping, it means sustainable, and by working with this energy rather than against it, we can build communication patterns, financial approaches and social connections that ain't just flashy moments but enduring, long-lasting foundations for real success. It's basically the Taurus speaks to hair energy of the zodiac, not the most exciting transit but definitely the one you'll thank later. On the psychological matter, our mental stamina, motivation gets increased, allowing us to stick with complex problems without the usual mental fatigue. It's given marathon mind energy where others would sprint and then burn out. We can totally be slow and think and have the endurance, what's needed to complete a marathon. The connection between our thoughts and physical sensations can become more harmonized, helping us process emotions through our body rather than getting stuck in mental loops. Information can stick better when it has a practical hook, so we may find ourselves remembering details that have tangible applications while filtering out theoretical stuff. Once we've thought something through during this transit, we can trust our conclusions completely, eliminating the second guessing that often follows important decisions. And this transit delivers the psychological superpower of mental persistence, while others flit between ideas like butterflies. We can build thought structures brick by brick that will still be standing long after everybody else has moved on to the next shiny concept. But negatively, our thoughts can get stuck in well-worn grooves, making it challenging to consider alternative perspectives. As humans love our comfort thoughts, behaviours and stuff like that. Even when the evidence suggests we should change, we can think, but we're always, we've always thought this way, and this can limit our problem solving. So we have to be open-minded. We may become overly dependent on physical comfort to think clearly and struggle with mental tasks when the environment doesn't feel just right. And to slow down in our thinking speed can create internal stress when dealing with time pressure or quick response situations, and this can lead to anxiety when we can't process at our preferred pace. And abstract concepts can become challenging to grasp and understand. That can limit our ability to understand symbolic or theoretical frameworks that don't have immediate practical applications. In terms of the spiritual meanings, this transit helps us find the sacred in the ordinary physical experiences. Suddenly cooking a meal, feeling the sun on our skin, or tending a garden becomes a profound spiritual practice rather than a daily task. So a good energy to start thinking about planting crops or planning your spring summer garden rather than chasing spiritual highs. We should develop steady practices that accumulate consistency, accumulate our personal power through repetition and devotion. It's the difference between spiritual sprinting and spiritual marathon training. Our ability to commune, to be at one with nature, deepens dramatically. Tree, stones, animals and landscapes speak to us more clearly, revealing their wisdom. And when we slow down, enough to listen, this be good. And we may begin to understand spoken language and the fact that, what we think and what we feel can create reality when delivered with Taurian conviction and patience, giving our affirmations and intentions extra manifestation power. So the spiritual gift here is realizing that transcendence doesn't always mean leaving behind the body, the world, sometimes it means becoming even more present with it, but negatively on the spiritual level, we may overly separate spiritual matters from worldly concerns, missing how they actually integrate with aspects of the same reality. All is one after all, and we may just become so inflexible as well on our spiritual practices that we miss their essential purpose. So we can focus more on form rather than the essence of something, and we can use physical pleasures or material comfort as a way to avoid deeper spiritual work that requires facing uncomfortable truths. And getting caught in thinking spiritual advancement comes from accumulating spiritual experiences or knowledge rather than transformation, rather than change. To be spiritual means to change, to consistently change like nature does. On the esoteric hidden level, we can gain hidden insight into how our thoughts literally becomes things through the alchemical process of manifestation. This transit pulls back the veil on how reality is built from focused mental energy over time. Certain physical objects, places or sensations can become doorways to cosmic memory during this transit, allowing us to read information stored in matter, in books, people, the earth, stones, crystals itself. Our understanding of mantras, affirmations and sacred sounds deepens as we experience how vibrations concretes them into form. The ascent connection between speaking and creating becomes experientially real. We can receive initiation into the mysteries of the earth and its elements and its guardians, including nature spirits, elementals and the intelligence within the mineral kingdom. This transit's most powerful esoteric hidden lesson is that time, patience and physical embodiment are obstacles to spiritual realization. They're essentially ingredients for it, hence why we reincarnate into these physical bodies. They're not to be escaped, they're meant to be used in their highest form, But negatively, our thoughts can become so solid, so crystallized that they create energetic blocks in our subtle body, requiring physical methods to release them rather than just mental sieves. So we're talking about maybe meditation, energy bath, cleansing, stuff like that. Material objects can activate unconscious connections to past incarnations where we experience scarcity or loss, creating irrational fears or attachments. So working through our sort of like problems, journaling, doing the shadow work can really help us right now. And we can just miss the metaphorical layers of spiritual text by applying overly concrete reading to esoteric concepts, literally interpreting things rather than being open to the mystery, the metaphysical meanings that often just comes in like, aha, I get it moments, and we may be unaware of how our words are literally shaping reality around us, and this can cause unintentional manifestations through casual speech. So think about what you're speaking about, in terms of the creative expressions. It gives us the ability to translate abstract symbols into physical creations, and it bridges the gap between our imagination and manifestation. Our creative projects can really engage multiple senses, sound, textures, images can flow more naturally, and we can understand how to create immersive experiences. And while others abandon projects halfway, we can maintain creative focus until completion, seeing our visions through to their final form without losing interest. And we can do well at creating things that are both beautiful and functional during this time, refusing to sacrifice either aesthetic value or practical purpose. Really understanding that masterpieces aren't rushed into existence but carefully coaxed into form over time, having patience with the process. But negatively, we can struggle to work with metaphor and allegory and symbols, and we can miss the deeper symbolic meanings in art, literature and creations right now. We can resist experimental or challenging creative forms in favour of what feels familiar and safe, and this can limit our artistic creative growth, We can become overly identified with our creative outputs, making it difficult to revise, edit or let go of products that ain't working. We can find it difficult to create when our environment contains too many competing sensory inputs, sounds, textures, etc. and this can lead to creative blocks. On the emotional level, we can become skilled at identifying exactly what we're feeling and express it clearly. Rather than in vague expressions, we can be really firm and concrete about our feelings. The usual gap between our emotional experience and intellectual understanding can go smaller, helping us make sense of our feelings without dismissing their wisdom. Our emotional responses can become more predictable and steady, and this can create a sense of internal reliability that builds self-trust. We can naturally channel emotions through physical outlets like walking, gardening, cooking or creating, preventing emotional energy from getting stuck in our mental or energetic system, and it allows us to be more compassionate and acknowledge our emotions in our relationship without getting swept away by them. So this is really good for date nights and getting to know yourself on a deeper level. But negatively, emotions that are not processed can become stuck in our body, creating somatic symptoms that reflect unaddressed feelings. We can have difficulty letting go of familiar emotional patterns even when they no longer serve us, simply because they're known qualities, using physical pleasures to numb emotional discomfort rather than addressing the root causes of challenging feelings, and we can hold emotions in until they reach a breaking point rather than expressing them as they come up, creating seemingly random emotional explosions, eruptions, So, we have to try, as this energy is trying to teach us that thoughts ain't just abstract things floating in our mind, the actual forces that shape our physical reality, emotional, world, landscape and spiritual journey. And by slowing down our mental processes and connecting them more consciously to our body, we can discover that thinking isn't just something we do with our brain, it's a whole body, whole spirit activity that literally creates our experience of reality. So now I'm just going to talk about the aspects that Mercury is making when it goes into Taurus this year and how they influence this energy. So we've got the moon making a semi-square with Mercury. So this increases our emotional intelligence, especially in our communication, so we can understand our own and others' feelings more better. It increases our empathy and intuitiveness in our conversations, but negatively it can add to the mood swings, our stubbornness and indecisiveness in our communication as well, which can add to the miscommunication of our emotions that can overshadow our logic as well. The sun's conjunction to Mercury helps us to be more confident and have more charisma in our communication, so great for sales and marketing, as we can be more persuasive and engaging. But negatively, we can be arrogant and want to dominate each other in conversations, and this can lead to us feeling unheard or making others feel unheard. Mercury makes a semi-sextile to Jupiter. This increases our optimism and broad-mindedness, encourages us our enthusiastic and open-mindedness to discussions as well, but it can add to us over-promising, doing too much, being vague and lacking concrete details in our plans, just saying, yeah, I can do it without following through in details. Mercury's conjunction to Uranus adds to us being open to new ideas, especially to new communication ideas, and it can allow us to be more creativity and more inventive, but it can also lead to us being unpredictable and abrupt in our conversations as well. Mercury makes a semi-sextile to Chiron, so this allows us to heal through our communication, adds to us being able to be more gentle and empathetic, but we may avoid sensitive and vulnerable topics, and this can just lead to us being overly cautious in our relationships. Mercury makes a set star to the North Node, and this allows us to align our communication with our personal growth and helps us in expressing our future goals. Mercury makes a trine to the South Node, so it helps us to repair communication differences and problems as well, but we may lack focus by holding on to familiar patterns and being resistant to changing in our relationships. Mercury sets down to the ascendant, allows us to be more charming and approachable, so great for conflict resolution and networking, but we may prioritize how things look over depth in communication, and this can lead to superficial relationships and promises. Mercury makes a sextile to the midheaven, and this helps us with our professional communication as well, but it can bring a pressure to maintain a certain public image as well, but try and be true to yourself while remaining professional as well. There's also a T-square between Saturn, the midheaven, Jupiter. So this encourages us to be responsible and ambitious in our communication, especially in our career. So this is good with aligning our future career goals with our daily habits as well. But the tension between the old and new communication patterns can cause inner conflict or resistance to change. The first stellium between Saturn, Neptune and the midheaven in Pisces allows us to be creative and intuitive and work on becoming more spiritual, insightful and deep, but we can feel heavy or overly serious, and it can stifle us being spontaneous in our relationships as well, which can get in the way of change. The second stellium between the Sun, Mercury and Uranus in Taurus increases our innovation and communication and abilities to be forward thinking, but it can add to the unpredictable communication. The third stellium with Saturn, the North Node and the midheaven in Aquarius allows us to be more responsible in our communication and take accountability for what we say and do, but negatively it can add to us feeling serious and cold and turning off our feelings, which can cause problems in our relationships as well, so we just need to watch out for that. So yeah, now I'm just going to talk about the karmic meanings and lessons. So the key karmic meanings and lessons of Mercury in Taurus allows us to balance practicality and emotional depth. It emphasizes the need for grounded communication, but also highlights the importance of not letting practicality overshadow emotional expression. The lesson here is to find a balance where our words are both reliable and heartfelt. It reveals past life patterns where communication may have been overly stubborn or focused on material gain. The karmic lesson is to let go of feeling and being inflexible and rigid, and it wants us to detach from excessive materialism, buying things, escaping our emotions, and develop a more flexible and spiritually aware communication style. It wants us and teaches us the value of being dependable in our relationships. This means following through on commitments and ensuring our words carry weight, building trust and respect in our relationships. It gives us lessons in flexibility. While Taurus, yes, is an earth sign that values stability, the karmic lesson here is to vibe with change and be open and adaptable. It's about maintaining your grounded nature while being open to new ideas and perspectives. In terms of the past life memories or dreams that may surface, dreams where you were deeply involved in trade, selling, and this emphasises tangible results and material security. This could manifest as a strong desire for financial stability in your current life. Memories of past life negotiations such as peace treaties or agreements may come up. These experiences highlight the importance of perseverance and practical communication in maintaining harmony. We may remember a life where we were a craftsman or artist, valuing the creation of something lasting and beautiful. This could inspire a renewed appreciation for quality and endurance in our current plans. On the collective karmic level, we may be focused on accumulating wealth and possessions, often at the expense of genuine human connection, and encourages a shift towards valuing relationships and personal growth over material wealth. Taurus's earthy energy reminds us of the importance of living in harmony with nature. Collective karma may come up around environmental issues, prompting a move towards more sustainable and responsible practices, and we may want to be more meaningful in our communication instead of seeing it as a means to an end, e.g. financial gain. Our collective lesson here is to create more authentic and heartfelt interactions, moving beyond superficial exchanges. So yeah, ultimately, karmically it wants us to reflect on our communication style, encouraging a balance between practicality and emotional depth, giving us insights into patterns that need healing, and being open to personal growth can help us contribute to a more connected and responsible world. So now I'm just going to talk about how Mercury in Taurus affects our relationships. So in terms of family relationships, we can expect more thoughtful and enduring conversations. Family members may make their time to express themselves, ensuring their words are well considered, and Taurus's loyal nature can strengthen our family bonds, now developing a sense of dependability and commitment. It helps us be more patient, so discussions can focus more on creating a sense of comfort and financial security, which can be reassuring for everyone involved. But negatively, the desire for harmony can lead to difficult conversations, leading to unresolved issues simmering beneath the surface. And Taurus's fixed nature can sometimes make family members more resistant to change or new ideas, leading to occasional stalemates in decision making. In terms of friendships, conversations with friends may feel more substantial and meaningful, as Taurus's energy encourages depth over superficiality. Friendships can become more stable with a stronger sense of loyalty and trust. We may find more joy in sharing everyday moments with friends, appreciating the little things in life together, but negatively, friends may be less open to trying new things or exploring different perspectives, making the friendship feel stagnant, stuck. Some of you may let go of some friendships, There may also be a focus on material comfort or financial security in our relationships, which can overshadow emotional, spiritual connection. Committed couples, our conversations can feel more grounded and reliable, with both partners taking the time to express themselves thoughtfully. Discussions might focus more on long-term goals and create a sense of financial and emotional security. Taurus's sensual nature can increase the emotional and physical connection between partners, developing intimacy. The relationship might become too predictable, leading to a lack of excitement or spontaneous things. Taurus's possessive tendencies can sometimes come up, leading to feelings of jealousy or insecurity in our relationships, so we need to watch out for that. In terms of hookup relationships, conversations may become more straightforward and clear, reducing misunderstandings. Taurus's sensual nature can increase physical attraction and make relationships more enjoyable. There's less likelihood of playing games or being overly dramatic, as Taurus prefers straightforwardness, but negatively there can be a stronger focus on physical attraction without much emotional depth, and this can lead to superficial connections. Both partners might be more comfortable sticking to what they know, which can limit their exploration of new experiences together. For those who are single and self-partnered, you can find it easier to tune into your own needs and desires, developing a deeper connection with yourself. Taurus's love for comfort and pleasure can inspire you to prioritise self-care and indulge in activities that bring you joy. You may feel more patient about your romantic timeline, trusting that the right connection will come when the time is right, but negatively. And also there may be a tendency to isolate or become too comfortable with solitude, potentially closing yourself off to new social opportunities. And while self-care is important, there's a risk of overindulging in comfort or material pleasures, which can distract from personal growth. In terms of career development, our minds, because they are more logical, methodical right now, we can build solid foundations rather than chasing every shiny new opportunity that comes. So your words can carry more weight as people notice you say what you mean and mean what you say. You can have improved ability to communicate about money matters and negotiate effectively. You can follow through on projects, and you can have a preference for doing one thing exceptionally well over multitasking. But negatively, there can be communication delays. We can take longer to respond to messages or formulate ideas. We can have resistance to workplace changes, and we can have stubbornness when new systems are introduced, wanting to stick to the old ways. We can overthink practical details, and this can lead to missed opportunities. In terms of our personal development, it supports developing habits that stick and make lasting changes rather than fleeting self-improvement kicks that fizzle out. So we can have improved awareness of how our physical sensations inform our thoughts and choices, increased ability to identify and articulate what truly matters to us. We can understand that meaningful change happens gradually, like growing a tree. We can have greater attention to how our environment affects our well-being. We can have increased reluctance to push beyond familiar territory. We can have improvement in our stubbornness. It can be like, this is just how I am, that actually can get in the way of change, and just wanting to stay in our comfort zone and all of that as well. We can be too focused on touchable achievements rather than the internal shifts that come through working through our psychological, emotional and spiritual blockages, doing the shadow work and inner work and working with our inner child. In terms of spiritual development, earth-based spiritual practices, so we can just have greater appreciation for rituals involving natural elements, walking on the grass, hugging trees, being out in the wind, being in water. We can have the ability to establish and maintain a regular spiritual routine. We can find the sacred in the sensual world rather than escaping material existence. We can see the divine in ordinary objects and experiences. We can find meaningful ways to work with what we already have, but negatively, we can focus too much on spiritual stuff, crystals, tarot cards and t-shirts and clothing, rather than inner transformation. We can become too inflexible about our spiritual beliefs rather than remaining open to mystery. We can get distracted by physical comforts, and this can become, obstacles to a deeper practice rather than, helping us. In terms to our educational development, what we learn now tends to stick with us long term. We can have greater sort of learning through practical demonstrations than theoretical lectures. So practically doing things can help us learn it. We can have improved ability to establish and maintain regular learning routines. We can focus on thoroughly understanding, deep core concepts rather than surface level knowledge of many topics. So it's good for deep diving. But negatively, we can find abstract theories more difficult to understand. Without practical examples, we can take longer to absorb new information, but we can retain it better. We can have a preference for traditional learning methods, and this can limit growth as well. In terms of self-partner development, we can listen to our inner voice more. We can have less critical mental chatter and more consistent self-support. We can have an improved ability to appreciate our physical self through all 5 senses. We can have clear communication with ourselves about our personal limits. We can establish nurturing routines that actually stick. But negatively, we can have resistance to updating how we see ourselves when growth happens. We can choose immediate ease over long-term self-evolution. We can have an over-reliance on physical pleasures to manage emotional states, So we just have to, watch out for that and try and manage our emotions in healthy ways. So now I'm just going to finish up with the best things to do when Mercury's transiting in Taurus. So if you're creative, it's a great energy to slow down, explore your art yourself through textured painting, scented candles, music with layered sounds, finish what you started, returning to abandoned projects and bring them to completion with renewed patience, Take slow walks outdoors, collect physical objects that incorporate into your work, put digital tools away and work with your hands like clay, paper, fabric or other tactile materials. Capture your ideas by speaking them aloud. Professionals, it's a great energy to develop talks or proposals that emphasize concrete benefits rather than abstract concepts. Create or update procedural documents, manuals or training materials that will serve long term. It's a perfect time to discuss salary budgets or resource allocation with straightforward language. We can break complex issues into simple, manageable steps rather than seeking quick fixes. We can establish communication routines that colleagues can depend on, like weekly updates, regular check-ins, Entrepreneurs can find and develop a communication style that reflects your core values and remains consistent across platforms. We can review our business assets and create detailed plans for maximizing their value. We can document each step of our customer's journey with attention to practical details to make it better. We can clarify exactly what tangible benefits our business provides in simple, concrete language. We can develop content systems that we can realistically maintain long term rather than unsustainable posting schedules. Alternative healers can create clear written guidelines for your healing techniques, develop treatments that deliberately engage all 5 senses, practice explaining complex energetic concepts using simple nature metaphors, develop handouts, guides or resources that help clients understand our work, gather concrete stories from those who have maybe used your healing about how your work has created tangible changes in their lives. Lovers can have conversations about what you both truly value in life and relationships. You can take turns in describing what you find physically beautiful about each other. You can discuss and document what makes each of you feel secure and cared for. You can talk concretely about how you see your lives together in 1, 5 or 10 years ahead. You can identify and practice each other's preferred ways of receiving affection. For those who are single and self-partnered, you can journal about what truly matters to you, independent of others' expectations. Document what physical experiences make you feel more nourished and centered. Adjust your living environment to reflect your authentic values and sensory preferences. Practice speaking to yourself with the same reliability and patience you would offer a good friend. Create clear, kind communication boundaries for expressing your limits to others. So when Mercury is transiting in Taurus, the quality of our thoughts and words matter more than their quantity. This transit invites us to speak less but mean it more, to think more thoughtfully but less frantically, whether we're creating art, building a business, healing others, nurturing love, or developing a self relationship. Consistency, sensory awareness and practical expressions are key, and the communication patterns that we establish now have the potential to support you long after Mercury has moved on to its next cosmic adventure. So while it may not give you the quickest thinking or most flexible ideas, it provides something potentially more valuable, thoughts and actions upon which you can truly build your life upon, and that's what it's all about, daily habits that support our long-term goals. So yeah, I'm Amani, and this is the end of this long, in-depth special on Mercury transiting in Taurus. Take care and see you next time.